And now to the Middle East. President Trump revealing there are no ongoing talks with Iran as tensions continue to escalate across the region.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us live in Tel Aviv with the details. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Iran has continued to launch new attacks, firing 2 missiles at the UAE on Tuesday. The event triggered sirens there, forcing millions of people into shelters. All of this taking place, and the UAE responding, suspending all trade with Iran until further notice. Iran denied they were responsible for the missile attack. This does come as the war of words between the United States and Iran is ongoing, with no indication that a deal could be reached anytime soon. President Trump posted to Truth Social saying there are no talks or conversations going on or scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval blockade remains in full force and effect. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. All water mines have been removed or detonated. A day prior, U.S. negotiator Jared Kushner told Fox News that communications with Iran were still underway. Immediately after the statement by the president about the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian officials denied the critical waterway is open. Now, the Iranians did launch multiple attacks on vessels there over the weekend, with Iran's foreign minister saying this.
Iran's foreign policy is a continuous process. Each government may move it forward through a series of initiatives, a different kind of dialogue, and new initiatives. But our foreign policy has a number of fixed principles that every government seeks to advance.
The Financial Times reports that Iran has weighed hitting U.S. targets in Europe if the war escalates again. The report specifically named countries such as Cyprus and Bulgaria.
The Iranians are about to miscalculate, and they've done it before with this president. And they believe that being more aggressive, being more violent to create the image that this war is not working right and is going to cause him political damage, he's not going to stand for that.
The bottom line here, the region is stuck in a cycle of statements and strikes with no end in sight. Guys?
Trey, like we keep saying, at this point, it's something different every single day. It's either the strait's open, then they say, no, it's not. We're in talks. No, we're not. I mean, people are really frustrated with how long this is going on, and there's got to be a level of frustration from the people you're hearing from as well.
Look, there's a lot of confusion in the region about what's taking place on the ground, and this is the reality of the situation. Iran is continuing attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is by no means completely open. Vessels are going through this waterway at about 10% of what they're supposed to be, the pre-war numbers. And ultimately, the Iranians at this point appear unwilling to make a deal. And even from the administration, there is confusion in terms of if talks are happening or not. The president indicated they are not speaking with the Iranians. Jared Kushner said communication is still ongoing. And so the American people certainly are looking for clarity here as this conflict continues. And again, there's no off-ramp at this moment. And despite the fact these parallel conversations are taking place between Iran and Oman, the U.S. military, along with the Israelis, remain on alert for the possibility that the conflict resumes.
President Trump trying to crank up the pressure on Iran, issuing a new warning to Oman as the standoff over the strait drags on. The president also making clear that stopping Tehran's nuclear program is his top priority.
On the expiration of the Memorandum of Understanding, are you any closer today to reaching a final deal to end Iran's nuclear program?
Well, they want to make a deal, but they're not going to make the kind of a deal that I feel is necessary. Look, we're in there for one reason. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. You understand that? Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon.
All right, picking up our coverage again today, Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv joins us now. Trey, hello.
Yeah, hey, Bill, good morning. With the Memorandum of Understanding expired, both the United States and Iran have indicated the status quo will continue with no deal on the horizon. Overnight, another vessel was targeted in the Strait of Hormuz with an unknown projectile. This is taking place while Iran and Oman continue talks about the strait. The U.S. naval blockade remains in place, and President Trump has warned Oman against getting in the way as he pursues a better deal. Now, the Iranians have also released new statements about the conflict, with the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying in part, quote, patience, solidarity, and hope are the keys to Iran's resilience in the face of ever-increasing external pressures and threats. And Iran's parliament speaker saying this.
And let me make it clear. Until America implements its commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding, including lifting the blockade on the release of frozen assets, lifting the oil sanctions, adding threats and military operations on all fronts, and other conditions that America has agreed to, the strait will not be reopened.
On Monday, U.S. negotiator Jared Kushner indicated that conversations are still taking place with Iranian officials. He added that President Trump will wait for the right deal.
Where do negotiations stand with the Iranian regime?
Yeah, so right now, President Trump's been very focused on the economic pressure. He really feels strongly about the blockade. If you look at the Iranian economy, it's way worse off. It was bad before the war. It's way worse off now. But President Trump's been very clear on why he took the actions he took, which is he believes that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if Iran is willing to, finish the deal that they've been discussing with us to give up their ability to create a nuclear weapon, then obviously he's willing to make a deal that could be great for the Iranian people, and he's it's something he would be open to. But right now, they're not showing any interest in doing something that makes sense for us.
Right now, the region is stuck in a cycle of talks and strikes. There are no indications this will change in the coming weeks. Bill?
Trey, thank you. Trey Yingst, Tel Aviv. Dana.
President Trump issuing a new warning to Oman, threatening to bomb the U.S. ally if it gets in the way of efforts to reach a deal with Iran and reopening the Strait of Hormuz, because they've been dealing with each other and cut us out.
Meanwhile, new strikes in Syria overnight have the region on edge.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us live from Tel Aviv with the new details. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Reports indicate Israel launched strikes against a Syrian air base overnight, prompting U.S. Ambassador Tom Barrack to release a statement saying we are deeply concerned. He went on to say an unnecessary escalation that does not advance regional stability. Now, I spoke with a senior Israeli official about these reports, and they responded saying highly sensitive intelligence was shared with the United States and advanced at the most senior levels of the various agencies and bodies. This official went on to say al-Shara understands that he cannot operate like the previous Syrian regime, which maintained proxy forces. It's possible he didn't understand what was going on or didn't know. They could not provide any additional details due to the classified nature of this intelligence. But this comes as we are tracking the latest developments between Iran and the United States. The memorandum of understanding expiring yesterday with no diplomatic solution on the horizon. Early this morning, another vessel was struck in the Strait of Hormuz by an unknown projectile. While Iran and Oman do continue talks about the strait, the U.S. naval blockade remains in place, and President Trump has warned Oman against getting in the way as he pursues a better deal.
They want to make a deal, but they're not going to make the kind of a deal that I feel is necessary. Look, we're in there for one reason. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The Iranians have also released new statements about the conflict, with the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying, in part, patience, solidarity, and hope are the keys to Iran's resilience in the face of ever-increasing external pressures and threats. We're also tracking the latest developments here in Israel after a high-level meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Jared Kushner. Kushner indicated to Fox News that very good conversations are taking place about other countries joining the Abraham Accords.
The issue of Gaza and the Palestinian people has been directly tied to the Abraham Accords and your efforts to get more countries to sign on to this agreement. Do you believe the agreement will be expanded under the Trump administration?
We have a lot of very good active conversations going with countries, some obvious, some not obvious. And I think once we get this Gaza situation moving forward, I think that will hopefully de-escalate the tensions here. We have to get through the Israeli elections, which, as you know, Israeli politics are complicated, and then Israeli politics in an election are even more complicated. And so hopefully when we get after the Israeli election, there'll be some opportunities for expansion. But President Trump's been very focused on this. He's had great conversations with many countries. And it's the right thing to do. And, what's interesting, too, about the Abraham Accords is that it kind of took a different approach to the region. And everyone always said you can't have normalization until the Palestinian issue is resolved. But what we showed actually through the first branch of the Abraham Accords is that the Emiratis were actually the biggest donors to Gaza, and they've done a ton to help the Palestinian people. And it's only by having relations with Israel that they're able to help the Palestinians hopefully achieve a better outcome for themselves.
President Trump issuing a warning to Oman, threatening to bomb the U.S. ally if it gets in the way in its efforts to reach a deal with Iran on reopening the Strait of Hormuz without tolls. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us live from Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Brian, good morning. With the memorandum of understanding expired, both the United States and Iran have indicated the status quo will continue with no diplomatic solution in sight. Early this morning, another vessel was targeted in the Strait of Hormuz with an unknown projectile. Meanwhile, Iran and Oman continue talks about the strait. The U.S. naval blockade remains in place, and questions remain about what comes next.
What happens now? The MOU has expired. The Iranians are still targeting vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. They're still threatening the life of President Trump. Do talks continue?
I think, as we said, I mean, we continue to have communications, and when the deal's ready, the deal will be ready. Deals are hard. I mean, it's, you know, it's funny. President Trump is always aiming for the impossible deals. A lot of politicians say, well, this is too controversial, this is too hard. He thinks more like an owner than a renter, and if something's virtuous, you know, he's in his second term now, he's got a lot of experience, and his goal is to really focus on the big things that will change the world long after he's no longer president and no longer he's here. So he's really trying to kind of focus on the big things, and that's why he's focused on this issue, but he's going to hold out to do something that is the right deal that he believes will withstand the test of time.
The Iranians have also released new statements about the conflict, with the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying in part, quote, "Patience, solidarity, and hope are the keys to Iran's resilience in the face of ever-increasing external pressures and threats." Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson added this.
The negotiations never began, and therefore, the 60-day discussion is basically no longer relevant.
In that exclusive interview with Jared Kushner, he indicated there is some progress in the Gaza ceasefire talks that are ongoing, and says Hamas could start to lay down their weapons in as little as 30 days. Guys?
So, Trey, back to Iran for a second. If you look at the Wall Street Journal, everything the Iranians have been doing since the MOU was signed is escalating. You know, with hitting our neighbors, not giving up on the strait, beginning to get the Houthis a game plan to shut down the Red Sea, and put additional stress on our forces. Do you think our game plan is just to allow them to do it as we get closer and closer to the midterms? Or do you sense the president's patience will wear out?
It's an interesting question, and I would point today to the comments from Mohammad Khalibaf, the country's parliament speaker in Iran and one of the top negotiators for the regime in Tehran. And he said that Iran would not be willing to come back to the negotiating table and make a deal until the United States adheres to the MOU. Well, the reality is the Iranians are violating the memorandum of understanding each day. As early as this morning, you saw another strike on a vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, and it is very clear in this agreement they're not supposed to be targeting ships in the strait, and they're supposed to ensure safe passage for these vessels, many of which are currently trapped in the Persian Gulf. And so there's a lot of these public statements from the Iranians about what comes next in the region and their military preparations. But the reality is they are not adhering to the agreement that was reached early in the summer.
Never intended to. Thanks, Trey.
Thank you, Trey. And then putting a reward on our soldiers if they catch our soldiers, $30,000.